My name is Ariel Posen. I'm a singer-songwriter and guitar player. Before becoming an artist, I spent the majority of my career being a guitar player for artists, for bands, in the studio, and on the road. Once I began my own solo career, I realized that I was shaped by my experience and that there were some interesting stories to tell. I wanted to ask a few colleagues and friends of mine who have had a somewhat similar but different road about their story and their experiences. I think there's a bigger story to tell here, and I think this is something that can be really helpful to a lot of musicians and artists on a similar path. So without further ado, on today's episode we have Butch Walker. What initially drew you into becoming just a performing musician?
Well, I went to see my first concert, and being from a small town, I grew up 3 hours south of Nashville here, in a small town called Cartersville, Georgia, which was much smaller when I was growing up there in the 70s and 80s. And in 1977, I begged my parents to take me to see the rock band Kiss play for my. It was like maybe my 8th or 9th birthday. I can't remember, but it was they were headlining 2 nights at the Omni Arena, and it was on New Year's Eve was the main night. And so I was like, I don't care, just make it my Christmas present, my birthday present, because my birthday's in November. I was just like, I have to go see this. And regretfully at the time, my parents decided yes, and so they took us, and then took me and my 2 older sisters, and it was amazing. And so I've told this story a million times, but it's like I saw Ace Frehley do his guitar solo, and sparks flying out of it, and it levitated up into the ceiling, and he shot his fingers at it, and it it blew up, and 20,000 stoners went mental. And I was just like, I don't know what this smell is, but I want this for a living, So yeah. I was like, I want to do this. So I guess since 8 years old, I never looked back. And then I just started playing in clubs when I was old enough to drive. Because I'd only played a couple of shows before I could drive. I'd played like my first show in my cover band when I was 15, where I was singing and playing guitar. And then I joined a band. We got a band together in Rome, Georgia, and we ended up going out and playing 6 nights a week in clubs for the rest of my high school days. And I would just literally wake up 3 hours later and have to go to school with like makeup running down my face, because we were like a heavy metal glam band,
Amazing. Love that.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so like so I'm thinking about 2 shifts in your career right now. So like, tell me the backstory of like when you first started. I guess I'm assuming like you finished high school, and then with the band started just like hitting the road full time.
So what happened is in Georgia, and we would play clubs mostly in Atlanta or in the suburbs of Atlanta, where you could get a gig playing heavy metal covers. There was no original music scene in the mid 80s. Up to that point, you could not play originals in bars and not get it. You couldn't do it without being already popular and get a gig, So we didn't want to play covers. We wanted to play our own stuff. And I kind of always knew that the minute I got out of school, I was going to go straight to Los Angeles. And so that's exactly what happened. So basically just plowed through playing 6 nights a week in cover bands, saving our money. And then the minute I was out of school, everybody else was waiting on me because I was the baby of the band. So they were all waiting on me. And by the time we finished, I was like, let's go. And so we packed up and we moved to Hollywood in 1988. And I guess that's where it all started, really. That's where it really started, because that's where I got my education on the streets of how to survive on $15 a week. We were out on the Sunset Strip every night promoting our next show coming up. And so we would flyer, and you'd be literally just sitting there with 1,000 other hair metal bands that looked exactly like you, handing out flyers to girls, doing the same exact thing, just trying to get people to come to your shows, because it was sort of like heavy metal Mardi Gras out there on the street. So everybody was just hanging out and drunk and fucked up and causing all kinds of chaos. And it was awesome to me. It was like spring break every night. And I never had a conventional childhood with with a high school spring break, and I wasn't going to go to college and be in a fraternity or anything like that. So it was like this was our frat, which was being on the Sunset Strip and getting to know all the fellow musicians that were, a lot of them go on to be wildly successful, and you were just, everybody was in it together. It was a cool scene, but it was strange at the same time.
Right. Wow. And then what about the career, the shift in career direction, early 2000s, right? When you decided, now I'm going to start a solo thing. Yeah.
Well, so, the hair metal thing didn't work out. I say it didn't work out, but we were one of a million bands out there that squeezed through the rabbit hole and got a record deal with a major label, and we're a bidding war band, and we were very well probably the last band to get a big record deal from that era, so I should speak. But grunge was looming, and it was coming in hot, and we were just kids from rural Georgia that didn't know anything except for what was on the radio, which was Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and all that, and that's what we loved. And so when we did 2 albums, and we did 2 records, the videos, tours, the whole 9 yards, and that fell really flat on its face after the second record. And I saw the writing on the wall. Me and 2 of the other guys in the band saw the writing on the wall and knew that it was going to be a swift kick to the nuts and be over very soon. And so we kind of reinvented ourselves. So I'm just trying to catch you up here up to the 2000s, because there was a lot before that.
Right.
And that was disbanding that whole era and starting a new band. And we started a new group where I was the lead singer, because I was not the lead singer. I was the little shredder guitar player in that band back then. So I went to being guitar and frontman for our new band all through the 90s. And then finally kind of struck some sort of pay dirt again whenever we changed up our style and our lineup a little bit and our sound, and called ourselves the Marvelous Three, and that was in 96, 97, 97, 98, something like that. And by the time we did a record, I started working on a batch of songs to follow up our independent release we had just done. And I'd written a song called Freak of the Week, which was about selling out, coming to terms with being a sellout and getting a song on the radio and all that. And at the time, ironically, I was all about not selling out, but just like all of us, we're living a lie. We all want to be successful. We all want to have people appreciate and hear our art far and wide.
Of course,
and so that song blew up on the radio locally in Atlanta. And all of a sudden, every record label was calling that had passed on us a month before and said, "What do you want? How much money do you want?" And basically we got another big giant record deal with Elektra Records. And we went out and we toured again. This was a mirror image of the same fucking thing that happened 10 years before that, except we were still in our late 20s at this time. And we went out and we had a hit at radio with that song that was very fleeting. It was a top 5 hit at Modern Rock. Never a follow-up. Going to make the next record. Already kind of knew the band was on the way out. We were burnt. We had already toured, 15 years we'd played together, the same 3 guys in different lineups. And so we disbanded, and that's when I decided after 2000, when we disbanded, we played our last show in Atlanta and broke up, and I've been kind of I guess what you would call a solo artist ever since. And so that's what started. It was me just going, I love these guys so much that I grew up with playing music, and we went through hell and went through so much more than this recording will ever be able to hold in that 10, 15 year era of touring.
Right.
That it was just better to go out and not replace band members and not try to carry that on. So I felt good, and I felt like it was a nice chance for me to liberate a little bit and be my own artist and not have to worry so much about, not that being a team player is wrong, and I love being in a band just as much as anybody has, but it was just time. I had a lot of ideas, and I was a control freak, and and luckily the 2 guys from those bands were still the best friends to this day. Still.
That's great.
Which says a lot about them, because they could have easily have said, "Fuck that guy."
Totally.
But I love those guys so much, and we've all kept a really incredible bond and relationship that no record company could destroy, and no amount of bad press or fans or lack thereof or anything, you know. And we had bad business deal after bad business deal. So anyway, I'm a hell of a I will sit here and like diarrhea mouth for the whole.
I love it,
entire
man.
thing,
It's perfect, and I love to hear when people who are like, it's a family, it's a brotherhood, a sisterhood, like being in bands. And when someone breaks off, whether it was like no bad blood, like there can always be weird stuff. So I'm always happy to hear when everyone's just cool. That makes me so happy.
Totally.
So tell me about it sounds like you were pretty self-motivated here, but like, tell me about the steps you took making your first record, your solo record.
The first solo record I did was called Left of Self-Centered. It was still kind of in the wake of that era in the late 90s that was the kind of quirky smarty pants lyrics. Marvelous 3 we kind of blurred the lines of pop punk, but we were not pop punk. We were way more rock and way more whatever, I don't know, than just, we didn't really fit into that, Dickies and, the whole thing, like the look, the SoCal pop punk thing. But we played along with it as much as we felt comfortable, but we always kind of skirted the sound a little bit and harkened back to more of our arena rock roots on it. And I kind of just didn't let that apple fall far from the tree on that first record of mine as a solo artist. I think I was scared of losing fans. I was scared of losing the Marvelous 3 fans when I didn't realize that, no matter what you do, if you did a carbon copy of of a record from that band and called it something else, no one's going to look at it the same way. And plus that was then, and every time forward is now. And it's just constantly changing. The landscape was changing rapidly. You had the Strokes coming in. You had this whole new era of early aughts music that was alternative music, the Killers, all this that was fucking great. The Hives, vital time for rock and roll, because quite honestly, I was getting a little sad by the fact that when Marvelous 3 was around, rock stars were denounced. It was like you played it way down. You either played it way down and you were the humble, smart bookworm lyricist, with the clean cut hair and the nice shiny shirt on in your video and all that. But you just weren't debaucherous, and you weren't wild, and you weren't extroverted. It was more of an introverted scene, unless you were pop punk, and then it was like, bleh, it was like fucking heavy metal nursery rhymes, and that was cool and all, but I didn't feel like I fit either one of those anymore. I was going into my 30s and had done the hair metal and the big rock thing and everything early in my life, and although I appreciated what was happening musically at the time in the early 2000s with all of these fresh crop of new bands coming up, I was really diving into more singer-songwriter stuff and feeling like I had a lot more to say lyrically than it was just about screaming and getting people's attention and with a big guitar hook. God forbid, because I love a big guitar hook, but I just was starting to realize I gravitated more towards picking up my acoustic guitar and writing songs that hopefully people would want to sing around campfires 20 years from then, and not, some of them you will from any genre, right? But that's when I followed it up after that Left of Self-Centered record. Didn't amount to much. That record did fine for what it was, but there was no radio success on it now or anything like that I was still chasing. So I just kind of threw all that out the window and said, I don't want that anyway. I'd rather be able to make records for other people and help them. Maybe they can get on the radio with those, and it'll still benefit me to some extent, but at the same time, I can be behind the scenes, and then I can go make records I just kind of want to make and not worry about what they fucking sell. Yeah. And so I did a record called Letters after that, and that was felt like that was my first real turning point into being a real songwriter and learning how to connect with people lyrically, to say. And right. So, and it did, and it's still got some of my favorite songs on it to this day. And that record's, going on 20 years old. So,
right on. So, okay, so fast forward a bit. Like, I know all the producing you're still doing. You're one of the few, I don't want to say anomalies, but like those kind of people that like a lot of us wish we could do, where we do the artist thing still, but still are just as busy producing other people. And like the variety, it's like grass is always greener. You have the variety, right? I think it's a great thing.
Thank you.
Maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, I feel fortunate to be able to do what I do, but we all want what we don't have.
Always.
Like I wish I had more.
Yeah, of course. But so now that you've like spent considerable time on both sides, like let's say band member, solo artist, producer, do you have any grand insight into the music industry that you think would benefit others that are on somewhat of a similar path now that you've just like been in all those shoes and still kind of are in all those shoes?
Well, I'd be lying if I said that any of these were my ideas, because I'm just fortunate enough to have been with a manager for 20 years now who is my saving grace and the smartest man I've ever met in my life, smartest human, and knows the big picture more than most people do. And that's why he's got such a successful career now. When we started together, he literally had like one band and then me. And it grew into this empire because he's very smart and knows how to make careers out of artists instead of it chasing a hit or chasing one song and just cashing that check and then moving on to a fresh new band, which I've always hated that, with artists or with management, where they would just like, it'd be an easy buck for them, and then that band only gets one chance, but that manager keeps getting many chances because they can just keep signing new acts and having a shiny new penny to present every week because, people always want the shiny new penny every year. And so he just always taught me that, he taught me the long throw, which was, the marathon is more important than the sprint. And, we wanted to just most importantly connect. And I've always appreciated this anyway, being a performer and touring 200 days a year most of my life, that I want to connect to people. And if you can connect to an audience, whether it be through your lyrics, your music, your live show, or all three, then you're gonna have fans for life. It doesn't matter how fashionable or passé you are. You'll have a career. And that was the most important thing to me, because early on when he started managing me, I went when I was scared of losing my previous band's following, which was built up mostly from a radio audience. I realized quickly after that radio audiences don't have any loyalty to bands. They just like what's on the radio that moment. You can't fault them for that. There's casual music listeners, and then there's music fanatics. And I wanted to play to music fanatics. I didn't want to have more just because more was considered better, because it's not. And there would just, I started going out and playing again. I had to scale it back. And I mean, our last Marvelous 3 show we played as a band was headlining a free concert. It was a free concert, but we had a ton of fans. And so we played to 30,000 people in downtown Atlanta, and then and called it a day. And we could sell out pretty big places back then, in our hometown, especially in Atlanta. But I went back to playing. I literally went after that first solo record attempt I could see that audience dwindling, because if you weren't on the radio, they weren't showing up, and it was those people that were not showing up. But I went back to playing in clubs, and I would play to like 100 people. And, I can remember me and Kevin Devine, him opening for me in New York City at some place called the Village Underground, I think it was. And it was like 150 people there, and both playing acoustic. And that was the other thing, is I was going to go back out and take an acoustic guitar and earn fans the hard and primal way, which was with just an acoustic guitar and lyrics. And sure, it took a while, but it eventually built back up to where, now when I can go back and play places bigger than I played in that band that had a song on the radio. And that's just, and I'm happy and I'm lucky that I can do that. Not everywhere. I mean, some places I'm still playing to 150 fucking people, but that's because I love what I do. And I'll take those gigs along with the ones where you're playing to 2,000, it's like, it's totally fine. But it this was a long, steady curve, of this ramp took 20 years to cultivate. And I think it's better that way, because a lot of the bands that were huge back then that I was opening for, I noticed, we'd play shows together in the early 2000s or something, and they didn't have anything hitting on the radio, and there would be like nobody at the shows. And I'd be like, okay, this is not for me. Those people are not for me. Not the bands, but those kind of the casual music listener fans are not for me. I want people that are obsessed with songs and lyrics and the craft, and will come out and sing every word as loud as they can, and not be yelling out, "Play the fucking hit," because I didn't really have one anyway. So, it's like, it's kind of, that worked itself out where I don't have to worry about going and just like playing like, Freak of the Week 10 times to make everybody happy. Although people do love hearing it live.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like quality over quantity, and I like looking at the big picture. If you're just chasing one micro goal all the time, you're limiting yourself too, I find, in so many ways. So now, how have your work priorities shifted? And like, these days, what do you think most about when it comes to a project?
Well, when it comes to producing other people, like I got lucky early on where I had a hit with somebody in the early 2000s, like 99 even, maybe like right after our band had a hit. It was like a year later, there was a song that I did for somebody, and it blew up, and it caused a chain reaction of people calling and wanting me to do it for them. And
right.
And so at first I was just taking everything. I was just like, it was just like anything, right? It was just like you go into a store for the first time that you haven't been into, and you're just like overwhelmed, and you just like pick everything off the walls. And that's what I was doing. And then I started realizing it was, that certain things were not healthy for me to be, engulfing myself with. I wanted to try to make it, again, more about the quality of stuff I did rather than the quantity. And I know a lot of producers, it's that way too. There are most producers and writers are frustrated artists. They're like, they had careers or never got a career doing that. And sometimes it is a job to them. It is a factory where they'll just like hire a manager and say, fill my calendar. I want to just, I'm successful if I'm busy, if I'm working 5 days a week, and then you forget what you even wrote by the end of the week. It's just, I never wanted that. That felt gross to me a little bit. And also, I think I just take it too personally because I'm still an artist. I still put out records, and I still tour, and I still care. So I might be not the best producer or songwriter outside guy for the job because I get too emotionally attached to what I'm working on, and I take it too personally. But it has allowed me to take less and do hopefully better work. I mean, sure, some records I've done have been complete duds, and more often than not, you'll have a failure instead of a success when you do something. It doesn't matter how good or bad it is. It's just the nature of the business. But, the way I look at it is there's obviously a lot of work that I can go look back on and say, oh man, I'm really proud that I did that. I'm really proud that I was involved in that. And that's the goal at the end of the day for me, is just having a few things I can really be proud of,
As an artist specifically, and I mean like even as a producer, you're still an artist. There's so much of that artistry that comes out in that kind of work. But specifically to your material, how much of your work would you qualify as innovative? And like in such a, closed modern market where there's like a lot of genres and micro genres, how are you trying to just keep things just kind of fresh for yourself, even not to like reinvent anything, just like for yourself?
I mean, first of all, I admire it, but I've never been the kind of people in the studio that are innovators or sonic, scientists, and these people like that can just, I mean, I loved Brian Eno growing up, but that wasn't my personality. You know, mine was more blue collar, hard on sleeve storyteller, songwriter. And when it comes to producing, that method is kind of the same way. It happens very fast. I'm not going to sit around and like, I'm just not your guy. If you want somebody that's going to be some experimental thing, you know, I just don't, I don't have the patience or the time for it. And it's not that I'm lazy. The song is important to me. And I know some people will argue that a song will become a good song by experimentation and sonic, you know, whatever you want to call it. I've found that when I do that, it's not productive and it doesn't come out well. Some people can do that. I think Sean Everett and people like that have the ability to, you know, put a mic in a trash can and sling it around the room and make something brilliant out of it. Whereas when I do it, it just sounds like a fucking mic in a trash can slinging around a room. And then I'm going, where's the chorus? And that's more important to me. And so I think you need all aspects of it let's call it as a producer. We need all aspects of what a producer is. But each producer doesn't have to contain all of those. It just depends on what's right for the artist you're working with. And since I produce a lot of my own records and I came up in a bedroom making records where I was the only guy playing everything and recording it and everything, and some of my heroes were those people like Prince who could literally, you know, record it all and sing it all and do it all. Those were my idols. And you know, I admire someone like his innovative process and how ahead of the curve he was. But for me, I just found that it works for me when I work in the moment and when I am working with someone on their song as a writer or producer. It happens to be better when I'm going with a gut instinct and there's a momentum happening. When the wheels of doubt start spiraling out of control and second guessing and there's 3 steps forward and 4 steps back, I'm out. I've got nothing for you and I fall completely out of love with it. And I know that sounds a little bit dogmatic, but it's unfortunately just the best work I've done. I mean, I can't help it. It's 30 years of trial and error. And I realized that early on that the best stuff and the stuff that I was the most happiest with was the stuff that wasn't overthought to death.
Yeah, man. So now that you have hindsight, would you change any of your decisions along the way?
Probably. If I had enough time to think about an educated answer for you, I'm sure I would change many, many small things. But as far as big things go, no. I'm really happy with the career I've had, and I'm really happy with the choices that I've made. I mean, we're all human, and we've all made a bunch of stupid mistakes. And sure, I've written the song about somebody I wish I would have never written it about in hindsight because I was young and just vitriolic as fuck and like right. Not like, you know, just full of piss and vinegar, as we say in the South. And I just don't think outside of a few things like that, career-wise, I'm pretty happy with all the choices. But I think the most important thing, that if I were to give anybody that advice, and it was the same advice that, you know, my dad always told me, especially when I was going to move to Los Angeles to try my luck at this fucking business, when I had nothing, I had not a pot to piss in and no money and maybe 4 original songs under my belt, and I was only 18 years old, coming from a small Bible Belt town. I got cold feet the day I was leaving, and I was scared. I got scared. I immediately got homesick before I even left home and was worried and started freaking out and adrenaline rushing and crying. And my dad was like, he's like, no, man, you're going to go. He's like, and I know my dad didn't want me to go. I think he thought it was a dead end job that you'd be better chances getting struck by lightning. And he's right. But you know, he was like, it's just, you know, I try to think of how to word this, but it's, you know, it's better to regret the things you've done than to regret the things you haven't done. And so, you know, I'd rather regret things I've done and made poor choices rather than regret never trying and never reaching for it. And so if I didn't get on that plane and go to Los Angeles in 1988, I wouldn't be here talking to you because this chain of events would have changed, you know? And so I think that's the most important thing is just don't be afraid to stick your neck out and go for it and try. Because you can always go back home. You can always go home. You can always and I fell back on day jobs many times after that. I fell on my face 100 times where I was doing really well with it and then nothing, and then doing really well with it and then nothing, and having to work a fucking delivery job and delivering pizzas and, you know, to college dorms you know, sure, it's depressing and frustrating, but you know, as cliche as it sounds, you just cannot give up ever.
Joan moved away to Colorado, said she'd found God in a boyfriend as well, one that won't hit her or make her feel shallow. There's a lot to learn about Joan. Joan had a fling with the landlord, so she got to stay here for free. I'm not a genius, but I figured out a lot to learn from Joan. After all this time, you were waiting all around to stop at the place where they slowly misplaced your life. Go get it right. Went to the closet to get dressed for work. I spotted a box I had not seen before. All kinds of letters that never got sent to a guy in Colorado since 1994. And I know it's wrong, but I sat it open in no certain order, a letter or two. She talked about blisters and bruises of anger. She bought a handgun to learn how to shoot. And the last letter said that she had to get out, but I couldn't make out the rest of the note from the bloodstains all over the page of the letters. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot I learned about Joan.